We're going to go over the entire review together, okay? I'm going to record, so if you have questions, you can stop me as we go through, but I'm going to start from the back page and go to the front page because I think the harder problems are towards the end. So we can maybe go through the beginning ones a little quicker. So the first two that we're going to look at here are our piecewise functions from yesterday. All right? There's a ton of different versions for your quiz. No notes or anything like that. We're just going to go back to normal school. We're going to take our quiz. You guys are going to be fine. But you might have parabolas or other shapes other than a line that you have to deal with. So make sure that you guys are aware of how to graph those things. I'm going to show you. But in this first question, number 6a, it says f of x equals, and there's two. So I have two lines here. I have y equals 4x minus 4, correct? And I have y equals 2. Is everybody with me? All right, so let's deal with 4x minus 4. Tell me about 4x minus 4. What's the slope?
4.
Slope is 4 over 1. And what is the y-intercept?
-4.
It's at 0, -4. It's that point. And then what is the boundary line that they want me to look at?
Everything less than 2.
-2, right? We're going to look to the left and the right and talk about that. So I'm going to go over here to my coordinate plane. Go down to -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to have a positive or negative slope? Positive. So our line should be going upwards. Okay, so I go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. Down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. So something like this. Okay, and then what was our boundary line that we're looking at? -2, okay? Now, I promise you tomorrow, everything will fit nice and pretty. I know this is, where are all of on this line, where are all of the values on the x-axis less than -2? To the left of my vertical line or to the right? To the left. And what kind of a dot should I have here?
Open.
Why is it open? Because it's not included, not equal to. So I'm going to go here, and then your line extends this way. Now, I understand this one came off the grid a little bit. No worries. But what do we do with the other stuff that we don't need? We erase it. All right. If you have an open dot, you need to make sure that I understand that it's open. Okay. I don't want to have to guess. Is that open? Do they mean for it to be? Like, make sure that I know it's open. If you need to write the word open and draw an arrow to it so I know, please make sure to do that. Now, the second line that we're talking about is y equals 2. Where is y equals 2?
Horizontal.
Horizontal where?
On the x-axis. Across the x.
Okay. Parallel to the x?
Yeah, parallel.
I know what you meant. And it's at y equals 2. So I look here, and they're telling me, okay, the boundary line that I need to look at is -2. So here's where x is -2. I want everything that is greater than or equal to. So which side of the graph do I want to keep? To the right. And what kind of a dot do I have at that too? Solid, because it includes. Good. We go this way. And there is our piecewise function. Questions? You guys okay with that? All right. Tomorrow I've already worked out answer keys. Everything fits nicely. You're not going to have just like a teeny tiny piece of the graph. You're not going to have to be like, oh, I have to extend it. Everything should fit nicely. So if we go down here to the second one, there's a couple things I want to bring your attention to. All right, couple things, and we'll talk about it in a second. But what I think, well, we'll just go like this. Let's do our two lines. I have y equals 0, and I have y equals -x plus 3. What is the middle function? It's a parabola, okay? We'll talk about that in a second. We should know how to graph a parabola. We'll plot points, but you should know that it's a parabola. It makes a U shape. That +4 means it moves up 4, and since it's negative, it's going to be facing which direction?
Down.
Down. Okay, good. So y equals 0. I had a lot of people ask me this question. Guys, where's y equals 0? It's the which axis? It's the x-axis. Yep, it's right here. Right here along the x-axis. So I just drew my line, y equals 0. And then where am I looking in between? Where are the area that I want the values to be? Between what, Jonathan?
-5 and -2.
On the x-axis. So here's -2, 3, 4. Here's -5. The only values I want on this line are where? To the left of those boundary lines, to the right, or in the middle?
Middle.
In the middle. What kind of a dot do I have at -5, and what kind of a dot do I have at 2?
Closed.
Solid at -5, and what?
Open.
Open at -2. How do you know the difference? One's included and one's not. And then I want everything in the middle. Agreed? Everybody good? All right, so now I'm going to do the bottom line. -x plus 3. So my slope is -1/1, right? And my y-intercept is at 0, 3. You guys agree? Okay, so I'm going to go up here to 3. 1, 2, 3. Negative, so my line's going to be going downwards. So I go down 1/1, down 1/1, down 1/1, down 1/1, down 1/1. We good? All right. Somebody read this to me, please. 2 is less than x. All right. When we have inequalities, most of the time, where is the variable? In the front, on the left-hand side, right? Well, this is switched. So, guys, if that confuses you of where you're supposed to be looking, read the inequality backwards. 2 is less than x is the same as x is what? Greater than 2. So I'm going to go over here to where x is 2, which is here. And I want all the stuff where x is greater than. So is that on the right-hand side or the left-hand side? Right-hand side. And what kind of dot am I going to have there? Open. Make sure I know it's open. So we keep this over here. And we erase the stuff we don't need. Questions? Now we need to figure out what's going on with that middle piece, that parabola. So we already talked about what this should look like. We have a little sketch in our mind. It should be up 4 units and flipped over, facing downwards. So let's just make a little table of values, guys. 2 seconds, make a little table of values, XY chart. I have -x squared plus 4. So let's plug in -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So I have negative, then I'm plugging in -2 squared plus 4. What is -2 squared?
4.
4. So then -4 plus 4 gives me what? 0. Hold on. Okay, now I'm going to plug in -1. So I have -1 squared plus 4. Well, what's -1 squared? 1. So then I have -1 plus 4 gives me 3. Okay. Now I'm going to plug in 0. What's -0 squared plus 4? Good. Now I'm going to plug in 1. What's -1 squared plus 4? Yep, 3. Then what's -2 squared plus 4? 2 squared is 4. -4 plus 4 is 0. So here are my points. So let's just plot them. I have -2, 0. -1, 3, 0, 4, 1, 3, 2, 0. And if I draw my parabola, where is my boundary line? What do I want? Between what and what? Between -2, where x is -2. Let me use a different color. X is -2 and x is 1. What do I have at the end of my graph? What kind of dots? Closed on both, right? Okay, so make sure you color your dot here and color here. Possibly. Question was, will we have a parabola on the quiz? The answer is possibly. Not saying that every version does, but you might have it. So there is what your piecewise function should look like. Yes, sir. All right, I want to talk to you guys here about these domain and range, interval, increase, decrease, constant. All right, let's do C and D first. C and D are pretty straightforward. All right, if you start having issues with this, guys, you have to rewatch the video. You got to look at some stuff online, But we have to understand the concepts of domain and range, okay? Domain is our x values, correct?
Yep.
Okay. We read domain from left to right, correct? X-axis. Our range, we read from low to high, bottom to top, however you want to say it, and it's the y-axis. So when I look at this graph right here, I love this kind of a graph because it's going, I have arrows, correct? And they're in opposite directions. So this graph is going to forever and ever and ever get wider, and it's going to forever and ever and ever get taller in both directions. So what is my domain for this? Negative infinity to positive infinity. Good. What is my range? Negative infinity to positive infinity. We're always going to write interval notation. It's very important that you guys do that. But now when we talk about areas of increase or intervals of increase, decrease, constant, where do we read intervals of increase, decrease, and constant on? The x-axis. It's very, very, very important that you guys remember that. So what am I going to tell you to do with all the numbers on the y? Cross them out. Don't get yourself confused. Okay, remember, we're reading from left to right. It doesn't matter that the arrow is pointing downwards or pointing upwards. That does not matter. We're looking at the interval that it's getting wider. So we have increase, decrease, and constant. What can I answer right now without even thinking? What am I going to put for constant? NA or none. Good. If there isn't one, you have to tell me. Don't just leave it blank. But let's follow. Let's go on the left-hand side. We always read left to right. So I take from negative infinity over here. My graph is increasing, yes? To, we'll say, about 1.5?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll increase from negative infinity, yes, to negative 1.5. Again, on the versions on your quiz will be specific numbers. So now what's happening? From negative 1.5 down to 3, what's happening? We got a decrease. Good. So it's decreasing from negative 1.5 to 3. And then what does the graph do? It increases again. From where to where?
3 to infinity.
From 3 to infinity. You can just tack it on. If there's an additional increase or an additional decrease, just write it next to it. Remember, we only use parentheses on increase, decrease, constant because you cannot simultaneously increase and decrease at the exact same time. Sound good? All right, let's look here. We really like these because it's like, okay, here we start, here we stop, good to go. Domain and range. Let's see if you guys catch this. What is the domain of this function?
0, 7.
Justin Payne. Bracket 0 to what? 7 what?
Parentheses.
Parenthesis. Good. Why is 7 a parenthesis and 0 is a bracket? Tell me. Closed dot means include. Open dot means not included. Good. What's the range?
Bracket negative 1, comma 3 bracket.
Bracket negative 1, comma 3 bracket. Good. Very good, guys. Okay. Intervals of increase, decrease, and constant we read on which axis again?
X.
I know I keep saying the same thing. I'm going to repeat myself 1,000 times. What can I answer right away?
Constant.
Which is?
NA.
NA or none. Question.
I'm sorry.
Okay, let's cross off, please, any y values. And we're going to read left to right. What is my graph or my function first doing?
Decreasing.
Okay, from where to where?
0 to 2.
From 0 to 2. If you guys are still struggling with this, look, draw an arrow. There on the x-axis is where we start decreasing, and there is where we stop decreasing. So then I look and I see my graph is doing what?
Increasing.
Increasing. Well, show me if you need to. It's increasing from there on the x-axis to there. So from what?
2 to 6.
It's increasing from 2 to 6. Good. And then what does it do again?
Decrease.
From where to where?
6 to 7.
6 to 7. All right, how do we feel about that? Now we have to think a little bit. You guys will probably see something like this. Not as hard as B, but you'll probably see something like this on the quiz. What do you notice about A? Talk to me.
It's split.
It's split. There's a what?
Line.
There's a gap, right? So we have to account for a space somewhere, whether it's in the domain or the range. We'll talk about that. But you have a gap here. It's right here. Y'all see it? All right. What else do you notice? What do you notice about the circles on this graph? Okay, those two right there, at what point?
1.
On 1, where x is 1, they're both open. Does that mean it includes that point or no?
No.
Correct. Okay, so let's talk about our domain. Domain is from left to right. Now this is a piecewise. I got a piece of a parabola and a piece of a line. So over here on my x-axis, right, this is, I have an arrow at the end, so we're coming from negative infinity, right? You guys follow me? Okay, so look, that blue graph, it uses everything on the x-axis from negative infinity all the way to what number? 1. Does it include 1? No. But then I have another piece of a line. What does it start with? 1. Does it include it? No. And it goes to what?
4.
Does it include it?
Yes.
Yes. Does anybody know how we say this one and this one? The U in the middle. It's a union. Good. But do you understand, guys, why I can use every single number on the x-axis except for 1?
Yep.
Okay? If this dot was closed, what would my domain be?
Negative infinity to
Negative infinity to
4.
4. Good. Very good. But since it's open on both of them, they're telling you, look, you can use everything in the world, left to right, except for 1. Yes, ma'am.
Why is it 4? Why would it be 4 if it's closed because it includes it?
Yes.
So technically it would be like kind of all connected if it included it.
Say it again.
Like, if it's a closed circle, technically it's including 1, so that's why you jump to 4.
No, we stopped at 4 just because that's where the graph stops.
Okay.
Like here. It's like 4-ish, but like there. But we don't use 1 because both at 1 right there, it's not used on either of the blue graphs.
Okay.
Yes.
So on any one of those open circles, it was closed, the domain would just be negative.
Correct.
infinity to 4.
Yeah. Correct. Let's look at the range. What can I use? Where does this graph start from the way bottom?
Negative 1.
Does it include negative 1?
Yes.
Yep. So negative 1 to what?
Positive infinity.
Positive infinity. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. There is nothing below negative 1. So that I agree that that's the specific starting point. Now, is there a gap right here? Yes. But is there a gap there?
No.
No. So it may not, the range, it does not include, it's going to be included because at some portion of stuff that's graphed, there are values that exist there. The reason that we go up to infinity is because this arrow is never stopping. So there is a gap when we go left to right. There's a specific gap because they're telling you, for some reason, whatever the way they drew this, 1 will never ever work as a solution to either one of these, the parabola or the line. But as far as the range goes, there may not be any values here that exist, but there are some here that exist. So that's why that you include those values. Now, if we talk about increase, decrease, and constant, this is pretty straightforward. What's the constant here? There's none. Good. All right, cross off your y values. You don't need them. What is this graph doing? From negative infinity
Decrease.
to 0. What is it doing?
Decrease.
Negative infinity to 0. It's decreasing. And then what's it doing from 0 to 1?
Increasing.
And then what's it doing? From where? To 1 to 4. Good. Perfect. Let's look at our domain and then our range. Domain is left to right. Correct? So I have an arrow here and I have an arrow on this end. And then what do you notice about the two dots? One is closed. They're right on top of each other, right? So one is closed, one is not. So what's my domain here, guys?
All real numbers.
It's all real numbers. Negative infinity to positive infinity. Make sure you write it in interval notation.
Oh.
Now my range, okay? Initially, what are you guys going to tell me the range is?
Negative 1 to infinity.
Okay, negative 1 to infinity. That's what I originally wrote yesterday. And then Ms. Carver and I were like, wait a second. Anybody else have a different thought? Okay, hold on a second. What did you say, Mateo?
I put -1 and -1.
Mateo said -1.
I put bracket 2 to infinity.
Okay, 2 to infinity. Okay. I agree with Mateo saying -1. What else? It goes 0 to infinity. Why is it not -1 to infinity?
Because we're not reading the x-axis. The x-axis.
Okay, look, if we're looking at the y-axis, guys, I just want you to see this. Right here is -1, right? And right here is 0. Does any part of either of these two graphs exist here?
No.
So that's why there's that gap. Right? You have a function right here at -1. And then you have a function that starts at 0. But there is a gap right here that we have to account for. Tomorrow in your quiz, you're not going to have any that are that specific with a constant like that. I just wanted you guys to see that. You may have something like this where there's a gap in your domain where you have to say, oh, it stops here and starts here, but you're not going to have a constant that's like you have to account for just that one value. But good job, Mateo. There should be a parenthesis right here. I'm sorry. Question. Let's talk about increase, good, decrease, and constant. Does this one have a constant?
Yeah.
Yay, we finally have something to write there. Okay, so remember, we're talking about -infinity to positive infinity, and we're only looking at the x-axis, so cross off your y. So from -infinity over here, all the way down, whoops, to what number? What's your graph doing?
Decreasing.
So -infinity to 0. And then from 0 to 2, what's it doing?
Increasing.
0 to 2. And then from 2 to infinity, what's it doing?
Constant.
There you go, 2 to infinity. Questions about that? All right, let's look up here, guys. Let's talk about equations of lines and stuff like that. What is this form called? Slope-intercept, good. And what is this called? Point-slope. Are you getting either of these formulas on your
No.
quiz tomorrow? Nope. So make sure you know them. All right, you don't have to know both of them. You have to know slope-intercept form because your problems are going to ask you to put equations of lines into slope-intercept form. So what are the two things you have to have in order to find the equation of a line? Slope and y-intercept. So if you're given 2 points, let's find the slope. Would you guys agree with me that we can say 7 minus 2 over 3 minus -3? Okay, if you write 3 plus 3, that's fine. But 7 minus 2 is 5, and 3 minus the -3 is positive 6. So my slope here is 5 over 6. Now you can use point slope form or you can use slope intercept form in order to find the equation of the line. Okay, I'm going to post all of these worked out answers. So the way that it's worked out on the review, I'm going to do differently on the video, just so you have a different way to look at it. All right, I'm going to use the 0.37. Okay, if I was going to use point slope form, oh, my nose is itchy. If I was going to use point slope form, I would use the 0.37, and I'd put the slope right there, and I'd put the y value there, and I'd put the x value there. Then I would distribute the slope and write it into slope-intercept form, which you guys can do. Some of you like to just use y equals mx plus b. So y equals mx plus b. Never mind. Mx plus b. All right, on the review, it's worked out in point slope form, so I'm just doing it the other way. So I'm going to use the 0.37. You can also use -3, I'm just going to use 3, 7 because they're both positive. So for the y value, I'm going to put 7 equals, my slope was 5, 6, so 5, 6 times 3 plus b. I'm finding my y-intercept, correct? Mm-hmm. All right. So I have 7 equals 5 sixths times 3 is 15 over 6, right? Plus b. I'm going to reduce that fraction. 15 over 6 is going to become 5 over 2. Great. Now, how do I get b by itself? I'm going to subtract 5 over 2 from both sides. All right, yeah, guys, you're going to have fractions. If I change 7 over 1 into seconds, what does it become? 14 over 2, okay? What's 14 over 2 minus 5 over 2? So my intercept is 9 over 2. So I now have my slope and my intercept. So to write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form, this would be y equals 5, 6x plus 9 over 2.
You have to simplify the 9 over 3.
No. Question was, do you have to simplify the 9 over 2? You can just leave it as an improper fraction.
If we did it the other way,
You get the same answer.
I got 27 over 6, simplify that.
Yes. Yes, always simplify.
So on the quiz, we get to choose if we choose.
Question was, can you choose to use point slope? However you want to figure it out is fine. Point slope or slope intercept. Your answer has to be in slope intercept because that's what the directions are going to say.
Will you tell, like, on the quiz that we need to know, like, point slope? Like, you're going to say, oh, put it in point slope, no?
Nope. All right, over here. I'm going to work this problem out. On the review, I also worked out what the perpendicular line would be, just to make sure that we remember. But if you're given an equation, and it says, write the equation of a line that's parallel to, what do you know your new equation should have? Same slope. So I have 2y plus 6x equals 4. So I need to move my 6x to the other side, correct? So 2y equals negative 6x plus 4. Divide everything by 2. So y equals negative 3x, what?
Plus 14.
Plus 2. So if I'm going to write an equation of a line that is parallel to this one, the parallel slope would be negative 3 over 1, correct? And I have a point. So now I'll just use the point slope form. Let's try it that way. So y minus y1 is 2 equals negative 3 times x minus 4. I just use this as x1 and y1. So we distribute our negative 3. So y minus 2 equals negative 3x plus 12. Agreed? Add 2 to both sides. And I get y equals negative 3x plus what? Plus 14. Perfect. Now on the review, I uploaded the answers. I'll publish them as soon as we're done here. I also worked out the perpendicular line. If I have a perpendicular line, guys, what is my slope going to be?
Opposite reciprocal.
Which is what? Positive 1/3, right? Make sure we remember that. Going backwards makes it easier, huh? All right, let's look at these two. Determining if lines are parallel, perpendicular, neither. Parallel lines, we just said again, same slope, right? Perpendicular has opposite reciprocal, and neither is neither. So to show work, guys, I want to see all of you work, but you don't create steps that don't need to be. All you need to do in an equation like that or a question like this is to put each line into slope-intercept form and then compare their slopes. So if I move this 5x over, this line becomes y equals negative 5x plus 9, correct? You guys agree?
Yeah.
Okay. If I move this 1 over, this becomes y equals negative 1/5 x plus 1. That is showing me your work. I don't need to see anything else. Are these parallel, perpendicular, or neither?
Neither.
They are neither. Negative 5 and negative 1/5. They are not the same number, and they are not negative reciprocals or opposite reciprocals. They are reciprocals, but their signs are the same. So you guys would answer this as neither. If all you do is say neither or parallel, and I mark it wrong, and then you come to me, well, I just looked at it. No, that's not going to cut it. I need to see some work. So make sure you guys do that. Over here, if they're giving me 2 lines, they give me the slopes of both. 2 points of each line. Just find the slopes. So watch, see if you agree with me. Negative 7 minus a negative 16? 0 minus 1? Minus a negative gives me a, so 9 over negative 1? Okay. Same thing here. 11 minus negative 7. Negative 1 minus 1. So I get 18 over negative 2. What does that reduce to?
Negative 9.
Negative 9 over 1. What are these?
Same.
Parallel.
So we could have just left it at that.
Yeah. Now, if you guys do this and then you answer, because I get this every year, same slope. Okay, that's a very true statement. But is it the answer to the question? No. So if you prove to me that they're the same, fantastic. Now tell me, does that make them parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Yes? Okay, here we go. You guys are going to have a question where you have to identify the slope, the intercept, and graph. You guys can all handle this, no problem. If I move this x over and this 9 over, this becomes 3y equals x minus 9. Divide by 3, you get y equals 1/3 x minus 3. What's the slope?
1/3.
What's the y-intercept?
-3.
Is this a positive or negative line? Positive. So it's going to go like that. You guys can graph it. All right, coming over here. Same thing. All we need to do here is just move this over. So I get y equals 4x plus 6. What's the slope?
Positive.
4 over 1. What's the y-intercept? What kind of a line is it?
Positive.
Okay, good. Promise you there's one. Whoops, there's one on your quiz. It's just easy like that. And then lastly, all right, last thing. I'm not going to do the slope because we've already done the slope a bunch, but let's talk about distance real quick. Again, y'all, you're not getting the formulas. So our distance formula is we subtract the x's, square them, subtract the y's and square them, and take the square root, right? So it doesn't matter if you say 1 minus a negative 3 or negative 3 minus 1. Just keep the x's together and make sure you subtract. So I'm just going to say negative 3 minus 1 and then 6 minus 0. So as we simplify, what's negative 3 minus 1? Negative 4 squared plus 6 minus 0 is 6 squared. Negative 4 squared is 16 plus 36, I get
52.
square root of 52. If you leave your answer like that, you're going to get points off. You have to have your answer in simplest radical form. Some of you are still having issues on how to break down. Just do some upside down division. Start with the smallest prime number. So 2 goes into 52 26 times. 2 goes into 26 13 times. It's 13 prime. Okay? So now you're like, all right, well, now what do I do? Well, anything that's a pair, you can pull out in front. Anything that doesn't have a pair stays underneath your radical. So there is your answer. Now to do midpoint, y'all, midpoint. Take your x's, 1 plus negative 3, add them together, divide by 2. Take your y's, 0 plus 6, add them together, divide by 2. What is 1 plus negative 3? Negative 2 divided by 2, and then 6 divided by 2. What's the midpoint here? Negative 1, 3. Guys, midpoint is a point. Put it in parentheses. If you don't write it in parentheses, I'll take a point or two off. Just have two numbers separated by a comma doesn't denote a point, so make sure you do that. All right, distance here. 12 minus 4 squared plus negative 1 minus 5 squared. What's 12 minus 4?
8.
8 squared plus what's 1 minus negative 5? Negative 6 squared. 64 plus 36.
100.
Square root of 100, which is good. How do we find the midpoint?
Add your x's.
Add the x's. Divide by 2. Add the y's. Divide by 2. So 14 plus 12 is 16 divided by 2. 5 plus the negative 1. 4 divided by 2. What's 16 divided by 2? 8. What's 4 divided by 2? 2. Now, hypothetically speaking, You work out something with the midpoint and you get like 7/2. Can you leave it as 7/2? Yeah, I don't mind. How else can we write it? 3.5. How else can we write it? 3.5. Okay? If I were you and I got an improper fraction, I would leave it just like that. I cannot tell you how many times you guys will get like 9/2. And then you'll tell me, oh, 9/2, which equals 2.5. Is that true?
No.
No. Do I think anyone in here really believes that 9/2 is the same as 2.5? No. But that's a silly mistake that you don't have to worry about making. Just leave it as an improper fraction. That doesn't, I mean, it's not this problem that we just did. I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, just leave it. Questions? All right.